on the Club C, and I have seen many of you still dancing and listening good music. So I hope you really enjoy that. But it's nearly the end of the Tropentag. We have the last plenary session, and firstly, I would like to invite the dean of our faculty, Professor Patrick van Dam, for the start of chairing of that plenary session.
That's for him, by the way. Thank you, Bogdan, and good to see you, not all of you yet. I hope that more people will come in, because I think that we have an interesting program for the last moments lined up for you. So without further ado, I would like to start with the first part of this session, which is having three keynotes share their ideas with us and with you. So the first one is Dr. Jacobo Arango. The name sounds Latin American, so that's what it is. Based in Colombia, Ciat. He's into forage and feed for less climate change impact, I would say. But of course, he has other ideas up his sleeve. So without further ado, part two, I would like to invite him to present his keynote, please.
Thank you, Patrick. So it's an honor for me to be here for this keynote speech. So before I start, I would like to thank the organizers, Professor Bodan and all the other professors for the hospitality here in Prague. I think I'm taking the word for all of you. I'm sure you all have a very good time and an opportunity to exchange ideas. And I think in my perspective, the Tropentag was a complete success. So without further delay, I would like to talk today to you about the agroecological transformation of tropical livestock productions through improved grasses and also silvopastoral systems. So as an introduction, some of you may be aware of the importance of sustainable livestock production systems. So some years back, probably centuries back, and still in some places of the world, there is a family livestock farming, which is then characterized by a set of production that provide the family food nutrients, produce income, and they are also mixed in crop livestock systems. So they also produce workforce and also manure as fertilizer. So they are somehow in a cycle, including greenhouse gases. With the population growth and also the power of the market, we have now seen a shift for these production systems to focus more in specialized livestock production systems where crops and livestock are spatially decoupled. So they are not in the same space of area, but you have crops in one side to feed the animals that are in a confined system. And then this brings some conflicts, like for example, livestock and human food competition. So there are edible products that can be used to feed humans, but they are used to feed the cattle. And then the growth of other substances like antibiotics, growth promoters, and as well the larger losses of manure, for example, that in the previous system that I describing before, in theory it was a cycle. So the manure could then be incorporated in the soil, manure and urine, but here you have a lot of big amounts of this manure that in the best cases can be utilized to produce energy, but in some other cases not. So this is a good principle. And then of course, as a result of that, you have a lot of nutrient surplus and nutrient depletion of the system. Then we enter the agroecological framework, which is I think our common framework that brings us all of here together. So for all of us to be in the same page, I took one definition of agroecology of many So there are a set of principles and practices intended to enhance the sustainability of farming systems. And it's a movement that seeks a new way of food production, right? So it is characterized mainly by three components. So first, it intends to be, or it is a scientific discipline studying specifically the ecology part of the agricultural systems. It has evolved into a set of agricultural practices that I will describe in a minute. And it has turned into a movement that incorporates not only ecology, but also social justice, food sovereignty, and the preservation of cultural identities. So as you can see, it's a big challenge because it's something that is holistic. And it has a set of principles, as I said before. So there are 13 principles. 13 principles, including biodiversity, synergy, economic diversification, recycling, animal health, and a set of principles. So what I'm going to be doing today is try to present to match some of our work in terms of discipline, scientific work, with some of these principles to make concrete examples of them. So the first one of the principles that I mentioned is biodiversity. So to start with that, I would like to introduce Germoplast Bank that we have in the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT in Colombia. And this is host the biodiversity of three important species not only for agroecology, but for human nutrition, that are beans, cassava, and tropical forages. So today I'm gonna be focusing on the tropical forages, and the importance of these germplasm collections is that they not only store and keep and preserve biodiversity, but they are a bank for all of us, not as the bank we normally know to withdraw money, but this is to withdraw biodiversity. So all of us, including farmers, scientists, researchers, whatever, they can access to this biodiversity and do and work with it. So we have now a new building in the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT that you can see here. It's a state-of-the-art building that is now a reality, and it's made to conserve, to discover, and to engage, all with using the accessions we have as biodiversity, and this is really a treasure. I will use some simplifications. Of course, I know what I'm going to explain has much more detail than what I'm going to provide today. But in general, in the Global South, the livestock systems are characterized like this. So in Latin America and the Caribbean, so we have normally permanent grasses, and we have cattle or other livestock in open grazing systems. And in the Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast, we have mainly grasses that are used for cut and carry. So there are these two different systems. So for us, the power of improved grasses is that they are highly productive in comparison with unimproved grasses. And then they can provide better feed quality to the livestock we have. On top of that, they can be resistant to biotic and abiotic stresses, as the ones you can see here, insects and microorganisms, but also some harsh conditions we normally find in the tropics, in the soil or in the environment. So I'm gonna start now with some examples in terms of greenhouse gases regarding our work. So when we have improved grasses, so there are mainly three greenhouse gases that are coming from agriculture, specifically from livestock. We have, of course, CO2, nitrous oxide, and enteric methane. So how are the improved grasses helping to not only reduce emissions, but to increase absorptions of the greenhouse gases. So our early work showed that some improved grasses have the ability to have large root systems that are able to capture CO2 from photosynthesis, then put it into the soil, but in deep layers, so that in deep layers, this carbon is not so much susceptible to respiration, to bring it back to the atmosphere. And we have seen some details of that, for example, when you have an improved grasses, you have a larger root system, you are able to accumulate more carbon per hectare, but when you combine this improved grass with a legume, then you are able to further improve the carbon storage accumulation. The second example is about mitigation of nitrous oxide emissions, which is in the soil. And we have discovered that some of the grasses that we work with, they produce and exude some chemical components to the soil that interact with the soil nitrogen cycle, reducing the oxidation of ammonium to nitrate, which is normally very rapidly, and they delay the speed of this oxidation, and therefore improving the ability of plants to capture nitrogen in time. And we have observed also that this is reducing the emissions of nitrous oxide. The third example is the mitigation of the unavoidable enteric methane when you work with ruminants. So when you have a grass-alone diet, then you produce a given amount of enteric methane, but when you are able to include some legumes that contain in their leaves some secondary metabolites as tannins, saponins, and many others, these compounds are able to interact with the rumen flora of the ruminant, and therefore you can realize a reduction of, let's say, 20–25% of the enteric methane emissions. So again, it's not possible to have a livestock system without any emissions, but is it possible to reduce the carbon footprint? So in terms of coming back to the 13 principles that I told you at the beginning about agroecology, so I'm gonna be giving you some examples. I will start now with recycling, and this is what I was telling you before. And the principle is that we should aim to use local and renewable resources and improve the nitrogen, the resource cycles of nutrients and biomass. So in a very simplistic way, if you have a cattle that is eating the forage, and then some of the nutrients that this forage provide to the cattle is not able to absorb, then there is a deposition of manure, then this manure is incorporated to the soil, and through different processes such as mineralization, some of these elements are then captured back for the forage and then eaten again by the cattle. So they are somehow in a cycle. The second example is about input reduction. So, and this is about reducing the need for external inputs like feeds, agrochemicals, water, and other elements. So this is an example we did regarding the power of biological nitrogen fixation that some tropical legumes possess. So what we have here is comparing two systems, the grass-alone systems and the grass-legume system, in terms of productivity, nitrogen, and phosphorus uptake. And the different colors are referring to different components of the system. So forbs, legumes, primary grass, and secondary grass. And as you can see, the integration of these legumes, they always result in an increase in pasture biomass production by about 74%. Both nitrogen and phosphorus uptake were improved by about twofold, and also the legumes derive about 80% of the nitrate via symbiotic nitrogen fixation. And then a back of the envelope calculation that can give you an idea of the power of this process, the nitrogen biological fixation, is that by using in your system one herbaceous legume like Arachis pintoi, tropical legume, is then able to capture from the atmosphere about 200 kilograms of urea per hectare per year. So this is the amount of savings you could have. Again, this is, I know there are many professors and experts on the field. This is an oversimplification again. In terms of continuing with input reduction, so when you have a system with an improved grass alone in comparison with an improved grass legume, so you will have a lower carrying capacity. So this means the available biomass that is able to properly feed a cattle. Therefore, you will have little manure. And then when you come with your crop, you will have lower productivity, little crop residues, and of course, you will be more dependent on external supplies. When you have a legume here in your system, you are able to have more livestock units, of course, more manure that in theory could potentially feed your soil to produce more biomass. There are gonna be more crop residues, and you will have a less dependence on external supplies. A third agroecological principle is animal health. So I brought just here a table from one of our studies just to show that when you have also an improved grass plus an improved legume, in this case, you have much better animal nutrition to offer to the animal with higher protein, improved digestibility, and better energy in the grass legumes diets. On top of that, when we are talking about silvopastoral systems, we have the animal welfare. As you probably know, heat stress is one of the biggest problems in cattle or in livestock systems in some of the tropics. So it's just the same when we go to a field trip and we suffer from heat and we suffer from dehydration. It's just the same for cattle. When they are able to have some shadow areas, they're gonna have a reduced heat stress, they're gonna reduce their water loss, and of course the productivity could increase, and they're gonna have some rest area and better social behavior. A fourth principle that I would like to introduce based on our work is in terms of soil health. So this is again one of our trials combining the grass alone, the grass plus a herbaceous legume, and a grass plus a herbaceous legume and a tree legume, as you can see here in these silvopastoral systems. By the way, this work, I would like to highlight that this was one of the main works of a PhD students of the Life Science University here from Prague. So we tested how and then we also took different distances from the trees, from the shrub legume. So at just below the tree, at 1.5 meters of the tree, and then 5.5 meters to the trees, to see how the behavior in terms of soil health was looking like. So in essence, we found that the percentage of soil organic matter was better always in the silvopastoral systems, and the bulk density that could be an indicator for soil compaction was reduced even in the silvopastoral system. And we saw and identify this type of biogenic aggregates that as you can see here in the screen, a lot of fine roots providing soil aggregation. That is a key element for example, soil carbon accumulation. In terms of another principle, biodiversity, we also took a look about soil macrofauna, testing ants and some other insects from the different ecological niches. And as you can see here, the behavior was much better in terms of biodiversity of soil microfauna in the silvopastoral systems. In terms of economic diversification, so when you have these systems that include trees, you have a crop tree livestock system that could increase animal productivity, as I showed you before, weight gain. In some social systems, even cattle, it's a meaning of savings for the future and also a meaning of a status. Thank you. And then, of course, you can produce different products like timber fruits in case you are able to have a fruit tree in your system. And then in theory, you should be eligible for payment for ecosystem services. I know this is an area, an unexplored area, and is not a reality yet in our systems, but in theory, you should be able to, or entitled to, get some payments for the efforts you do in carbon sequestration, improve water quality, shadow, biodiversity, and then in some examples, selected examples in the systems I know most in Latin America, there are some ecotourism also farms. In terms of social values and diets, so we believe that animal source foods for human nutrition are very important based on this data. So about 2 billion people suffer of malnutrition for micronutrients, and about 800 million suffer from caloric deficiency based on this report. And this, I brought you a chart about the percentage of inadequate intake of nutrients in meat consumers comparing to vegetarians and vegans. Of course, I do respect the preference of choice for all of us here in the room. But anyway, just to keep the track of the talk, you can see some inadequate intake of some especially micronutrients like B12, iron, zinc, selenium, and iodine. In terms of the concept number 10, that is fairness, so there is also some economic analysis about the improve of mixed forages. So here what we have is different economic indicators. So this is not my area of expertise, but as you can see, the net income is much better when you have the grass legume or the silvopastoral system. The return rate is also much better in terms of percentages. The pay by year in terms if you, for example, need a loan to establish this system is reduced from 6 to 4 years. And also the minimum area required to have a profitable system is reduced from 6.5 to 3.7. And this indicator is important, especially in South America because of deforestation. There is a lot of pressure to the forest. So if we are able to produce more in a reduced area, that would bring benefits. The last example in terms of fairness is how much the consumer and the markets are able to reward the farmers when they are providing eco-agrological farming. So this is a study that is telling you, this is a small, fairly small study in the city where we live, in Cali, Colombia, asking the consumers if they were willing to pay price premium for eco-friendly beef produced. And then we saw that the majority were willing to pay more for this type of eco-friendly beef produced. And then another important aspect is that information and communication is key. So when there is information, they are willing to pay much more than just what they see in the product label. If they are aware of what's actually the farmer doing in the farm, they are willing to pay more. Of course, I know this is for some segments of the society. Not all of us can afford to pay more for food products. Finally, or coming to a conclusion, there is the outlook I would like to leave here for questions or for discussion. So there is, as I show you, I hope you are with me, that there is increased research interest and understanding of the agroecological dynamics related to improved forages and their integration in mixed crop tree livestock systems. There are some knowledge gaps related to forage varieties that are tolerant to a wide range of biotic and abiotic stress factors. This could be resolved by capitalizing the new state-of-the-art genomics and phenomics, but also social work and working with communities. Multiple interacting impacts of improved forages at the food systems level are present, so there is potential to reduce the agroenvironmental trade-offs. It's important to understand the drivers of uptake of improved forages and also the products they produce. especially with agroecological initiatives. It is needed for guiding a large-scale investments to support the decision-making process around that. And as we were discussing in the opening session of the event, communication is great. I think I do really believe that we need more people communicating science. So I believe there is this connection between what we do in terms of science and how we communicate not only to consumers, but also to real farmers. Finally, one of the initiatives that we are working in the CGAR within the agroecological component is called Livestock Climate and System Resilience. So I am one of the co-leads of these initiatives, and we are working basically in 5 working packages to strengthening the household capacities. So this is mainly about people, reducing the climate risk with digital services, trying to provide some digital services so that people know more or less or have more information about the climate forecast. Taking into account landscapes, not only working at the farm level, but having a wider look. We are also trying to work in terms of financing this transition to see in theory and in the IPCC and the UNFCCC conventions, especially developed countries have committed to invest a lot in terms of reducing greenhouse gases, but we are not seeing these investments. So we are trying to bring these investments to the people that they need in the global south, and also trying to influence policy. This is the last one. If you would like to have a further read or more information about that, my presentation is based in this review that we work with other colleagues. And finally, I would like to say that this is not a vision of myself or only to see it, but there are a lot of institutions involved in these visions, including this university. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacobo. Thank you, Jacobo. There's maybe scope for 1 or 2 questions from the audience.
Hello, my name is Armando Rivera. It's great for your presentation. I really understand that it's a good way to apply this in our regions because of our livestock system. But there is one question that I really want to point out about your opinion. You know, we are working a lot on this to reduce greenhouse emissions, to make better productivity, and it's really good in our countries where our meat consumption is really high. I mean, in Ecuador, and I don't know, in Colombia, we breakfast, lunch, and dinner meat every day, Monday to Sunday, 365 days per year. And when I come here to Europe, it's a little bit different. You know, they are really concerned about reducing meat consumption. And it's really interesting, that approach. So I want to know if a reduction of consumption in our countries will be good, or you think these measurements are enough to reduce carbon footprint in the livestock sector?
Thank you, Armando. I think my response would be that the challenge is so big that I think no single action is going to solve the problem of climate change. So I think we need to have a combination of approaches. So changes in lifestyle, as you were referring, I think is important, especially for people like us that we have the possibility to afford these animal source products. So I think it is possible to reduce the consumption and even to supplement some of these micronutrients that I just showed you that are coming from these animal source products. But in some other parts of the world, I don't think the answer of the climate change is there. I don't think we can demand, especially poor people, to reduce the consumption of these rich foods in vital nutrition components. And on the other hand, I think it's important to work and to put our scientific knowledge in terms of reducing the carbon footprint, even if it's not gonna be, it's never gonna be zero, as I told you, because of the inherent methane emission of cattle. I think if we are able to reduce by 10, 20, 30%, it is possible. So I think a combination of approaches is needed.
Yeah, a quick question. You said in the beginning there's the cut and carry system in sub-Saharan Africa and in Asia. How are your findings applicable to cut and carry systems? Because silvopastoral systems are mostly thought in grazing-based systems.
Yes, thank you. So some of the examples I showed are related, for example, to the root of the grasses. So even if the grasses are then grazed or if they are cut and then carried somewhere else, I think the grasses will be there. I think of course, there is no silver bullet. So by any means, I'm not saying that silvopastoral systems need to be applied all over the world. I think this needs specific contexts, and I think the cut and carry systems are. That's why it is important to work with the forages, because this is what the animal will eat, and also what the animal is sown, what the plant is sown in the soil. So in that respect, you will be able to impact both the soil, but also the feed nutrition of the cattle when you even offer as a grazing, open grazing, or if you offer it as a cut and carry in a different system.
Thank you, and let's give Jacobo another hand, please. And this allows me to announce the following speaker. We already had a flavor of what she will probably share with us on the first day. I think that Larissa will illustrate further that this conference was about research and development, but not only development, I think also research for advocacy and research for policy development. So please, Larissa.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to warmly thank Professor Patrick Van Damme for the invitation, and also Professor Bodam Lojka for the careful way he took care of my travel. Thank you so much, and for your patience as well. To begin with, I would like to say that I believe that nowadays agriculture is no longer synonymous with the food production, as I'm going to show you. I believe that with the worldwide economy, the food has lost its value as human nourishment, and it has been transformed into things which are not exactly food. These two things are, one, commodity, I mean, goods that could be commercialized in the global market, in global scale, which could be storage like soybean, beef, maize, etc. And the second one is agroenergy. So instead of agriculture responding to the human need, it has been addressed to the industry's need. Agriculture itself doesn't need pesticides or artificial fertilizers, but the industries that produces pesticides and fertilizers need agriculture. If agriculture needs pesticides today, it's because this need was created by the industries. So I'm going to divide my presentation in two parts. The first one is about what I am calling chemical-dependent agriculture. And the second one is agroecology as path. So the first one, I would First of all, I would like to show this anamorphosis. Here we have this map, which we call anamorphosis, where each country was proportionally deformed according to its importance in terms of pesticides exportation. As you can see, the countries from the north are controlling this global exportation of pesticides. And here we can see how the pesticide sales are according to the companies. The first point to highlight here is the fact that the sales are increasing year after year. The second point is, in terms of countries, Germany, through its companies, is controlling about 30% of the global sales, followed by China, because ChemChina, a state-owned Chinese company, has recently bought Syngenta. The sales of the top 12 companies in terms of value, I mean dollars, increased 27% between 2017 and 2020, from 43 billion to 56 billion. And in Brazil, the pesticide use has grown no less than 91% in these 10 years. In the same period, the cultivated area in Brazil increased just 29%, which is totally disproportionate to the increase of the area. The companies that are controlling the pesticide sales in the world are pretty much the same as those that are controlling the seed sales, as we can see. Syngenta, Bayer, BASF, and Corteva are controlling 75% of the pesticide sales. And three of them, the same ones, Bayer, Corteva, and Syngenta, are controlling about 70% of the seed sales. Therefore, companies based in the global north are somehow controlling monoculture around the world. There is a huge asymmetry between north and south. Here, for example, in 2018, the European Union exported more than 50 million kilos of pesticides to the Mercosur countries. Out of them, about 14% were pesticides that are already banned in the European Union, or which were never allowed by the European Union. And here we can see the number of pesticides already banned or never allowed per country. The European Union countries have the biggest circles because the EU is at the top in terms of pesticides not allowed. The EU has already banned 269 pesticides because the EU has the most restrictive legislation on pesticides. However, in the EU, as we have seen, EU is still selling pesticides that are not allowed on its own territory. This is what we call double standards. Let's have a look at one example among others. Belgium, in 2019, exported the fungicide carbendazim, which is toxic for human reproduction and development. And that's why it was banned in the European Union. So Belgium exported this substance, this pesticide, to 12 different countries. And where are going these pesticides? In Brazil, for example, Brazil is a good example. It's not good, it's a bad example, but it's a good example to understand what's going on. In Brazil, most of these pesticides are addressed to the huge monocultures or plantations, as we say to describe the crops in Latin America, during the colonial period. So more than 50% of the whole amount of pesticides in Brazil is addressed to soybean crops. If we add soybean, maize, cotton, pasture, and sugarcane, we have 87% of the pesticides destination in the country. So the areas with this kind of crops are so huge in South America that just for you to have an idea, the soybean areas in the Mercosur countries equal France's territory. So it's, for me, it's shocking. The first time that I've made this map, I was really in shock because it's what it, what it means in terms of human health, environmental health, loss of biodiversity, everything that you here know so well. So, and what's going on in the world, and Brazil is one of the examples. Instead of we are producing food, we are producing commodities which don't feed ourselves. So please have a look. While soybean crops has just doubled in 30 years and sugarcane has increased 50%, the areas of the four pillars of Brazilian food, which are rice, beans, cassava, and wheat, have decreased a lot. The areas of beans and rice, for example, have decreased about 40%. Beans are the symbol of Brazilian food, and Brazil has imported the beans for more than 10 years. So again, we are not talking about food production. Agriculture is no longer a synonym with food. On the contrary, hunger is increasing in Brazil, and it's so contradictory that hunger is higher in the rural areas than in the big cities in Brazil. So, in 2013, the rate of population in hunger, the high level of hunger, in Brazil was 4.2%, and in 2020, this rate has reached 9% of the population, which means that the number of people starving in Brazil has doubled in 7 years, but the production is increasing. So the spread of this chemical-dependent agriculture has brought a serious impact, whether of the environment or for human health. Here we have a map where we can see the municipalities in which deforestation has increased the most in the latest years in the Brazilian Amazon. And here we have a map with the municipalities where the use of pesticides has also increased the most. And here we have the information from the previous maps overlapped. As you can see, there is a red belt in the Amazon, which is called arc of deforestation. So besides of the physical deforestation, now we have also, we are facing chemical deforestation. Here we can see the most pesticides sales in Brazil in 2020, and the top 10, and 5 of those are not allowed in the European Union. And here, just so you have an idea, we have an infographic with a comparison between the level of glyphosate allowed in drinking water in Brazil and in the European Union. So in Brazil, it's not just an illustration, it's an infographic. In Brazil, the amount of glyphosate officially allowed in our drinking water is 5,000 higher than in European Union. So this map is regarding people intoxicated, people poisoned by pesticides in Brazil. There were more than 56,000 people poisoned by pesticides in the latest 10 years. But our health ministry estimates that for each case reported, we have 50 unreported cases, which means that we have probably had more than 2 million people poisoned by pesticides in Brazil in this period. And even babies. Here we have babies until 12 months old poisoned by pesticides. Can you imagine it? They are not even able to walk by themselves. More than 540 babies were poisoned in this period. If we take the subnotification, I mean the unreported cases into account, we probably had more than 25,000 babies poisoned. So there is no way without agroecology. I invite you to take a breath. To finish my speech, I'm going to show you some pictures from the MST, the Landless Rural Workers Movement, which is one of the largest social rural movements in the world, and which is one of the protagonists in Brazil in terms of building a path, I mean, building a way towards agroecological transition. As Rogério Mauricio said here on last Tuesday, and I totally agree with him, the only way towards big change when we are talking about peasants, small farmers, and rural workers is the experience. I mean, to watch, to observe the experience from the others, which means exchanging knowledge. That's what the MST, the Landless Workers Rural Movements, is doing in different parts of Brazil. In the 80s, when this movement started, their main goal was to achieve the land for the landless workers and peasants. And since the late 90s, they have realized that it was not enough. To achieve the land was not enough. Then they have understood that they had to face the big corporations that indirectly were controlling the agriculture. And they also understood that in the end, they were the guardians of the forests, the seeds, rivers, etc. I would like to show you just more 3 pictures. The diversity of seeds, of Creole seeds, here, for example, beans, maize, etc. The agroecological cocoa produced in a Brazilian state called Bahia, and other fruits as well. And one of the hundreds agroecological fairs that we have in Brazil. And finally, the huge donation that this movement, MST, has made to the population in hunger in the cities during the pandemic. They have given more than 7,000 tons of food. So trying to answer the main question in this conference, yes, agroecology not only can feed the world, but it must feed the world. I believe that the need for a progressive transition to the path of agroecology is more than urgent. Otherwise, we will continue on a path that will result in a collision against ourselves. So probably the question is not can the agroecology feed the world, but when. I believe that the question is when, because it's more than necessary. And I have seen lots of beautiful examples this week in this conference. Here I have the links where you can download some of these maps that I've shown to you. My contacts are here, and I would like to thank you again. Thank you, Patrick, for the invitation to take part in this amazing conference.
Muito obrigado. And the chance for one or two questions. Just maybe here in front and then at the back.
Thank you. Maybe it's less of a question and more of a comment. And I just want to couple, if you don't mind, Larissa, the presentation made by Arango and yourself. It's great to see, to hear this, and lots of information on how, from Arango's presentation, how all of what we do in science could be linked to the principles of agroecology. It's a clear demonstration. And what we're hearing from you is even more powerful in the sense that one of the major concerns is the use of pesticides. And this has been really demonstrated from the presentation, and it's greatly appreciated. Now, what I want to actually put forward to this conference is the fact that a question was raised, and you have said we need to go more than that, and when. And I think that was the question I wanted to ask as well, and you have just brought it up. So we should take it forward. We all believe, and we've seen from all the presentations, that agroecology farming can feed the world. It can, but when? And I guess that's another thinking that we should be bringing. I don't know whether we need to get our experts in impact evaluation of all of what's happening, but we need to answer that question. Otherwise, we'll be talking about this from year to year, and we've said that agriculture has been there for years, but we need to show this. It's not a question, but it's just a comment, and just to say that thank you for what you've presented, that is going to help us move forward. Thanks.
Mhm. Thank you, Mr. Harold. Thank you so much.
I have a question here also. Thank you, Larissa, for the presentation. I'm Brazilian as well, and it's very courageous of you. I think you have spoken already to more threatening audiences than this. I think we're all with you, and you've mentioned in the beginning that you fled Brazil because of threats, and I think that takes on a political dimension as well. And I think I missed a bit of political discussion in this conference. You just showed to us that if we haven't talked too much about the European Union or the CAP, it's auto-criticism for us to, are we asking the question because we want to keep the standard of life that we have here and produce the food elsewhere? And if the pesticides are not allowed here and are then to Brazil. I'm just wondering, now that you are in Europe and that you are representing our country here, how do these discussions take a political shape? And do you think any progress in that sense as well? Do you feel more welcome here in a sense, not in this audience per se, but in a bigger audience and the confrontation with the lobby? Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you. What's your name again? Esteban. So thank you for your question. This is an important question, both because we are so close to the elections in Brazil and because it's an issue in Europe, the discussion of these double standards. So I'm beginning with the last commentary. So France, so this is the double standard is an issue of concern here. So France, we have a good example. France already decided to don't produce, don't allow the transport, don't allow the storage, and don't allow the exportation of not allowed pesticides in European Union. So France is how can I say, is launching an official way against this double standard, and I believe that it's have been followed by other countries. I am currently living in Belgium, and they are putting pressure. The civil society and some organizations, they are pressuring the government to take the same decision, and I've seen it in Germany as well. So it's growing. I can see it's happening. So I've been more than welcome in Belgium, not for personal reasons, but also in taking part in this debate. And regarding the Brazil election, you haven't touched directly in this, but I'm feeling obliged to talk about it because in 2 weeks we have elections. And if it just to give you an example, after our ex-president Dilma Rousseff have been impeached, the number of pesticides allowed in Brazil just rockets. If we look at the figures during the Bolsonaro's government, it was like unbelievable. 500 new commercial products allowed in each year of his government. And the numbers of indigenous murdered also just rocketed. So that's what's on the stake in 2 weeks. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. So talk about pesticides and talk about the situation in the South is also discuss what's going on in terms of political situation in Brazil. Thank you.
And thank you, Larissa. I know there is It's a pity you are not a candidate. We would know who to vote for. I know there's lots of other questions, but we have to keep the timetable into consideration and keep track of that. With this, I would like to invite someone that you have seen already the first day and also figuring in sessions and such, Patrick Worms. I was happy that Larissa at least said something good about Belgium in the end, because on some of the graphs that were shown, that was not so good, and Patrick also lives there, so 2 Patricks, 1 Belgium, 1 problem, but we will solve that, no?
I'll keep that. Thank you. Yeah, Belgians, as you notice, always wear glasses, always are bearded, and are always called Patrick. Thank you very much, Patrick Van Damme, for giving me the opportunity to do this keynote speech. The first thing that I have to say is, while I'm involved in a lot of agroforestry things, unlike most of you, I am not a scientist. I don't do research. I'm a parasite. I use the science that you all produce to build arguments to explain to people what it is we could do. So I'm a senior science policy advisor for C4ICRAF. I'm a vice president of EURAF, the European Agroforestry Federation, and the president of the International Union of Agroforestry. That means, of course, that I'm interested in whales. And I'll tell you at the end of my presentation why. But before that, obviously it's agroforestry. When I first heard about agroforestry 15 years ago, I fell in love. It does everything you want agriculture to do. It controls erosion, it increases soil carbon, it controls wildfires, it recharges groundwater, weed and pest control, less nutrient leaching, etc., etc., etc. So, why is the world not covered in these things? Because the world cares about money, which means that if you're trying to do things that involve the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, you are not going to get anywhere unless you worry about people's incomes. And the picture that you see there is a picture from the Sahel, which is this band of semi-arid land going from Senegal in the west to Djibouti in the east, where I am building, together with partners in government, in local authorities at international level, and in development work, a coalition to try to put these principles in action at a large scale. Now, This is going to be relatively difficult. If you're going to be worrying about money in that region, then you need to worry about the Human Development Index. We all know that places like Scandinavia, which have low inequality and where incomes are roughly equal, yes, you have rich and poor, but the poor are not very poor and the rich are not very rich, except the oligarchs, but let's ignore these for a moment. It's relatively easier to run things well than in countries where you have a large mass of very poor people, a small elite of very rich people, and a huge degree of inequality between the two. Yet that doesn't mean that it cannot be done. Not that long ago, and by that I mean in terms of human history, we've been around for about 200,000 years, and a mere 700 years ago, the Kingdom of Mali was possibly the richest region in the world, or certainly one of the richest regions in the world. And the evidence we have for that is anecdotal. But one of these anecdotes is that when King Mansa Musa went to the Hajj, he traveled with a retinue of 30,000 people and lots of elephants and giraffes and soldiers and slaves, etc., 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 but also with a lot of gold. And he spent so much of that gold in Cairo, one of the biggest cities in the Islamic world, that he devalued the value of gold in that city for over a decade. That's how much gold he spent in that region. Somebody had to dig that gold. Somebody had to refine it. Somebody had to turn it into ingots that the king could spend. That's somebody were people who needed to be fed. That means that the region was producing a remarkable agricultural surplus that could allow this kind of industrial activity to take place. So, which is the context within which we're trying to do that? Most of you may have heard that we have this thing called the Great Green Wall. And this evolved from the initial idea of just planting a 15-kilometer wide band of trees over 8,000 kilometers along the southern Sahara, to the much more sophisticated and realistic vision that we have today, which is a mosaic landscape that involves forestry, silvopastoralism, silvo-arable systems, and a lot of farmers doing good by the land. So let's look at what we have. The challenges, those of you who know the Sahel, you'll all know them. Good God, there's erosion, it's really dry, it's desertifying, there's climate change, the governance sucks, insecurity is high, and the infrastructure is lacking. But we have a young population. Lots of people with lots of energy who just need a goal in life. There's a lot of sun, which means there's a huge potential for renewable energy. Enormous aquifers, which have not yet been tapped. And while I'm not in favor of industrial agriculture tapping aquifers because you're just sucking the water dry and then eventually it all collapses, nevertheless, in an environment like the Sahel, you could increase groundwater usage massively. You have these cultural resources. The Sahel is home to dozens of different groups, each with their own unique cultures and their own unique ways of looking at the world. You have natural resources in the region. You begin to have cross-border cooperation. The Great Green Wall is an example of that. And you have potentially high value chains. Those of us who know Joseph Garvey or who saw his presentation yesterday will have some better idea about that. Out of all these things, the most valuable asset the Sahel has are the smallholders. And you might sit there and go, what, the smallholders, but they don't produce anything. No. And that's because all of us have been had by the feed the world narrative, which, apologies for my French, I call the feed the world bullshit. And the feed the world bullshit, Larissa, is why people buy so many pesticides. Here's how it works. Oh my God, we're going to be 10 billion people in 30 years. Fuck, man, we need to feed all these people. We need 70% more food. We need to produce more calories. So decision makers, policy makers, focus on this global calorie production. So how do we deal with that? Well, we have better crop genetics. We have specialized livestock breeds. Those are expensive, complicated, high-tech solutions. So they work best for large-scale farmers. So the message to the agricultural community is, guys, get big or get out. Let the big boys deal with the farming system. So the subsidies go to the big farms. The products, the technology is developed for the big farms. The big farms are supplying the uniform commodities to processors, retailers, and traders. We all know why supermarkets don't like to deal with smallholders, because smallholder production is heterogeneous, whereas supermarkets just want 1,000 tons a month of exactly the same product for the whole year. And that is music to the ears of the input industry, the agribusiness industry, and then they frame that question. You have hundreds of lobbyists in Brussels addressing the world from this perspective compared to 1 or 2 people like me. Feed the world is really strong because it taps into our deepest nature, empathy. We don't want to see children starve on TV, is the crudest way I can put it. So obviously, if we don't think very hard, we need to produce more calories. And obviously, we've got all this high-tech stuff, all these wonderful farms in Brazil, soy the size of France. If we can only do more of that, we will solve the problem of hunger. Yet, it's complete rubbish. And the reason why it's rubbish is because even the best machine informed by the best artificial intelligence and what have you is not nearly as clever as a human being. And so when you look around the world, it doesn't matter whether you look at poor countries on the left or rich countries on the right, the small farms are more productive. Why? Because a small farm is handled a little bit like a garden. A farmer can take an intervention at the level of an individual plant if he or she so chooses. And so you have the result. On the left, you have a chart that shows you the productivity for a number of basic crops in a number of countries of all the farms producing that crop divided into 4 groups by size. And everywhere you see that the smallest quarter of farms are way more productive than the biggest quarter of farms. On the right, you have data. Sadly, I couldn't find more recent data, so this is almost archaeological. It's 30 years old. But what it shows is from the US Agricultural Census, and what it shows is that the smaller the farm, again, you have more and more and more profitability. Now, there's a lot of stuff hiding inside that. For example, small farms can produce high-value horticultural products. Big farms produce commodities, cereals, which by definition are cheap and produce less money per hectare. But still, bear that in mind. So let's work with smallholders. Smallholders are energetic or could be energetic, and they are clever or could be clever. Why do you use the word could? Because there's a lot of stunting in the region, in the Sahel. A lot of malnutrition. I think it was you, Jacobo, who had a chart showing the amount of micronutrient deficiency in amongst vegetarians and vegans. You could do the same sort of thing amongst smallholders in Africa, and you would see that the micronutrient deficiency is very, very high. So you need to address stunting. You need to make sure that stunted parents do not have stunted children. And there we have some great evidence. For example, we know that children who grow up within 3 kilometers of a forest have a higher dietary diversity than children who live further away. Now, not everybody is lucky enough to live near a forest, but almost everybody is lucky enough to live near trees. And this is a picture from Joseph Garvey. What you see here is a picture of a millet field in Niger. As you notice, the millet's not doing great. Drought here. But look at all this thorny little thing that most people would completely ignore on your left, Boscia senegalensis. It's producing massively. Why is that of interest from a nutrition perspective? Because it's got more proteins than millet, it's got more carbs, it's got less carbs, it's got more lysine, calcium, potassium, magnesium, and it produces about twice as much in terms of yield per hectare than millet. And unlike millet, you don't have to plow it, you don't have to plant it, you don't have to weed it, you don't have to fertilize it, you don't have to put pesticides on it. It's a bloody shrub, it's a weed, but it grows everywhere. Take that further, and as we've done at ICRAF, and you can make an analysis of the micronutrients that all sorts of species provide. And that's work that was done by Katja Kahlenbeck and colleagues. And what you have here is a complex chart, which I don't expect you to read, but basically what you have is a whole bunch of species. And then for a number of different regions in Kenya, when these species are fruiting throughout the year, you use that to create a suite of tree fruits. And these tree fruits need to do 2 things: micronutrients all year round and calories during the hunger season, the season when your crop reserves from last year's harvest are running low and you are not yet ready to harvest the next year's crop. And here you see what the recommended tree seed portfolio is for Western Kenya. We have dozens of those tree seed portfolio. They need to be rolled out. Farmers need access to the seedlings and to the basic advice on how to care for these fruit trees as they grow around their house. But we know enough now that we've done the research, Katja and colleagues have done that research to show that if you have these trees around your house and you treat them well, your micronutrient problems disappear and your calories in the hunger season problems are substantially reduced. Finally, agroforestry is great because it increases productivity of everything, the trees and the animals or crops under it. In agroforestry, you use a simple measure called LER, the land equivalency ratio. And all that means is the amount of monocrop cropland and monocrop forest plantation, you need to have the same biomass production as 1 hectare of agroforestry. In this theoretical example, it's 1.4. You have 0.8 hectares of crop, 0.6 hectares of forest, gives you the biomass production of 1 hectare of agroforestry. That number varies enormously. In the temperate zone, it's around 1.2, 1.3, like in this example. In the humid tropic zone, it can be 3, 4, 5. It can be very, very high simply because the ecosystemic processes are happening more rapidly and they're happening all year round. The impact of those things can be enormous. Look at the table on the top right, work done by colleagues in Malawi. So what they did is they measured the maize production of a whole bunch of fields. 36 of those fields were maize fields without fertilizer. 213 of these fields were maize fields with fertilizer. Malawi has a fertilizer input subsidy program, which means that farmers get fertilizer either for free or for cheap, as long as they vote for the right guy, of course. But then look at the line in red. Maize with leguminous trees, fertilizer trees, Gliricidia, Phytherbia, Leucaena, a bunch of other things. 3 tons per hectare. Whereas with fertilizer, it's 1.7 tons per hectare, and without fertilizer, it's 1.3 tons per hectare. Now notice what's going on here. The difference between 1.3 tons and 1.7 tons is real, and it's 400 kg, and it works out, I can't do the calculation in my head right now, but it's about 25, 27% higher productivity with fertilizer, which is the kind of thing that industry uses to convince us that we need to subsidize more fertilizer. But look at the trees. With the trees, you double the production, you have 3 tons per hectare. And then the clincher, you have 135 fields that are using fertilizer and have fertilizer trees, and they produce exactly the same amount as the fields that have fertilizer trees but are not using fertilizers. Fertilizers are, in other words, completely unnecessary to raise the agricultural productivity of maize in Malawi, at least in these particular contexts. You can do it just like the clever use of trees. And you have these examples from all sorts of things. Larissa, the chart at the bottom left, is from Para State, where we trialed 2 different kinds of agroforestry production systems for oil palm. In red, you have the monocrop system. In green, you have the 2 different agroforestry systems. The productivity is higher. And the reason for that is, of course, because agroforestry systems mimic some of the higher ecosystemic performance of forests compared to monocrop systems. They are better at carbon fixation, they are better at extreme weather buffering, they are better at nutrient cycling, etc., etc. That's why they work so well. And the clincher for me, to get back to the Sahel, is this picture. In the 1970s and 80s, you had some very, very serious droughts leading to bad famines in the region. People cut down the trees in a desperate attempt to get some money to buy food, and the landscape looked like this. Because you have such a long dry season, 8 to 9 months, the window into which you can grow crops is very, very, very short. So in that environment, it's really hard to get a good yield. This is what the same landscape looks like today. Millions of hectares of regenerated trees, mostly Phytherbia albida. These leafless trees you see are my favorite agroforestry tree because it loses its leaves and goes into dormancy at the beginning of the rainy season. The leaves, which are packed with nitrogen, fall to the ground. They're tiny, they rot quickly. The nutrients become available to your crops. And later, when the relentless sun starts beating on your crop, these trees come back into leaf and provide a distributed shade, which is helping the crop thrive. And so Ray and Tapan reckon about 1 million tons more crops are being produced under these systems than without them. Agroforestry is also great if you're worried about water. We live in the age of the great drying. We had massive droughts in China, in Japan, in the European Union, in the US, in various parts of Africa. And so if you do get rain, you want to make sure that rain recharges your aquifers. If you have no trees, chart on the left, most of your water runs off. If you have lots of forest, chart on the right, most of it evaporates. If you're in between, you have relatively little runoff, you have relatively little evaporation, and you have more water recharge. You have more water recharge under agroforestry systems or savanna-type systems with trees than you do in either forests or monocrop systems. So, what does that mean? That means that if you motivate people the right way and give them the right advice, it should be possible to regreen, regenerate land at a remarkably low cost by using these nature-based solutions. And that's what we tried under this EU-funded program called Regreening Africa. Basically, the deal we made with the EU is, let's do an large-scale trial. We reckon we can regreen 1 million hectares of land and improve the livelihoods for 500,000 households at an average price of 20 euros per hectare, which is about an order of magnitude less than what you would find in a typical World Bank project. This is going to be finishing in February. We are collating the numbers. We're probably not going to reach that number of 20 euros per hectare. It's probably going to be more in the region of about 30 euros per hectare. In other words, we're not going to reach quite 1 million. We're probably going to be about 800,000 hectares. But still, it's remarkably cheap, especially when you consider that you have to work in different countries with different partners, so the overheads are high. Some of these places really are difficult to reach. The governance is a bit complicated, so it's expensive to work there. And despite that, we are achieving these results. So yeah, great, we can celebrate, right? We can all wear the SDG thing on our laps. No, because it's the economy, stupid. And for those of you, about 70% of the room who are too young to remember who this guy was, President Clinton was a US president from the Democratic side, and he won a massive re-election campaign against the Republicans by focusing on pocketbook issues. That applies around the poor world just as much as it applies in the richest places on the planet. That means you need to figure out how to serve consumer needs in Africa. This company, Cocoa Networks, based in Nairobi, was founded by some friends of mine. 3 people, one Brazilian, one New Zealander, and one Indian, who met at Harvard Business School and then got really, really concerned about charcoal-driven deforestation. As you know, in most African cities, charcoal is the main cooking fuel. That means you have a deforestation frontier, deforestation bubble that is growing up around these cities. In Kinshasa, for example, it's more than 200 kilometers around the city now. On top of that, the smoke, the soot that this kind of cooking solution generates, especially in cities where you can't cook outside and when people are either cooking inside or in small courtyards, is really bad for your health. A typical NGO project would say, this is bad for your health and it's bad for deforestation, so here's an improved cooking stove. They did something completely different. They started by asking consumers, women, what they really did not like about their current cooking solutions. Easy. Charcoal is slow. You need 20 minutes for it to be hot enough to cook something on it. When you've got to get the kids ready for school in the morning, that's precious time. Second, charcoal is dirty, and they don't mean their lungs, they mean the school uniforms of their kids. If you have to wash the school uniforms by hand, that is a huge investment of time and labor. So what's the solution? Something that's fast and clean. Could it be gas? No, because gas is A, dangerous, and B, you need to buy the fuel in these big bottles that you need to leave a deposit for, and in quantities that most people can't afford. Could it be kerosene? No, because it's also not very clean, and it stinks. Ethanol. It could be ethanol. And ethanol, the reason I got to know these people is because they got the ethanol in their first trial in Mozambique from an agroforestry system. It's working like wildfire. Consumers love it. They buy the stove, they get the ethanol, the business plan is brilliant. People pay with M-Pesa for their fuel immediately, but the company pays its fuel 6 months later, etc., etc., etc. These guys went to Harvard Business School, right? So we need to develop businesses that get people to thrive in those landscapes. And of course, that's what you're doing, Joseph. Where are you? You're over there. That's what you're doing with Sahara Foods. You've got women harvesting these fruits, which are growing in these landscapes, and you manage to convince the best hotels in Niamey to serve them with pride. That's the way you build a business. And before you think that it's only 1 or 2 things, this delicious bowl of muesli I had at Joseph's house on the right is entirely made with products from the desert and from the Sahel. The only exotic thing in there is the mango. Even the milk comes from the desert date. So there are products, it's tasty. By the way, a bowl of that, you're not hungry for the rest of the day. It's really, really nutritious. And the next thing you need to do is to look at what the traditional food products are and how you can market them better. This is kilishi, it's a Nigerian specialty, it's dried beef meat. I love mine. I have my little stash. It's in a hidden away in a particular part of the freezer. The kids are not allowed to touch it before I give them, because, and you didn't bring me any, Joseph, I'm angry with you. But before we can get kilishi, and it's delicious, before we can get kilishi into European supermarkets, we probably have to deal with a drying process, right? I don't care, but I know my wife would very much care, right? She never touches the stuff. Then, for business to thrive, it needs a supportive ecosystem, just like a plant needs a supportive ecosystem to thrive. And in much of the world, government is not really helping business to thrive, right? This is the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, and you notice the Sahelian countries are really not doing too well. And if you're interested, just buy Joseph a drink and you'll cry at the end of it. The fact that he manages to build that little business, despite the best efforts of every single Nigerian administration to drive it into the ground, is a credit to his perseverance. Governments can also make or break landscapes. In Senegal, for example, if you want to legally cut one of these trees from your field to sell the timber, you need a signature from the village chief. You then need to go with that to the mayor, and in Senegal, mayors typically have 30 to 50 villages, so you have to find him, wait your turn, get that signature. You then have to find the agent of the forestry division and get his signature, theoretically for free, but the forestry guy may sometimes ask you for a contribution to pay the petrol for his motorbike to come and look at the tree, because of course he has to look at the tree before he can agree that you can cut it, right? Then depending on whether the law is clear, but of course these laws are rarely respected in the countryside. In practice, that should be enough, but very often, on top of that, the agent would say you have to pay a cutting tax. That means you have to get in a bus, you have to get to the tax office in the provincial capital, you have to wait your turn, you pay your cutting tax, you come back with that certificate, you have to find the forestry guy again, because the forestry guy has to sit there while you cut the tree to make sure that you do what is written in the protocole de coupe, the paper that very formally lays out what you're allowed to cut and how. Guess what? Nobody does that. Guess what happens to the trees? They disappear. There are fewer and fewer trees in the landscape. Even if you're a farmer who loves agroforestry, you come back the next morning and one of these trees has disappeared because somebody stole it. If you find the guy from the forestry department and say, hey, somebody stole my tree, the guy from the forestry department is going to book you and fine you on the not unreasonable assumption that you cut it yourself and you couldn't be bothered to go through all of the bureaucratic bullshit. That's a way of breaking a landscape. This, from Niger, is a way of fixing the landscape. They had a presidential decree 2 years ago, I think it was, or 3 years ago, where the president simply said, no ifs or buts. If you regenerate a tree in your field, it's yours. You can do whatever the hell you like with that tree. You can cut it, you can burn it, you can grow it, you can prune it. Doesn't matter. It's yours. Guess what? The trees just came back. Farmers are not stupid. They know how useful trees are. The reason why the trees disappear from the landscape is not because farmers are ignorant and you need to teach them that trees are useful. They grow there. They know that. The trees disappear because the enabling conditions, the context, does not make it easy for these trees to grow. Finally, if you want to fix these issues, bureaucrats are great and business is lovely, but the actors are communities. Why? Because you have tenure issues. It's not like here, I mean, I own my house in Belgium. I have papers to prove it. There are papers at the notary office to prove it. There's databases to prove it. Somebody cannot just take in there and say, I like it, I'll take it. Across most of Africa, well, it's less clear. And the only way to guarantee tenure is by having community enforcement of tenure. And that matters even more for slow-growing creatures like trees. You can afford to plant a field of millet when tenure is unclear because you're going to harvest it in a few months, and if somebody takes the field afterwards, at least you've got a crop. But if you're going to be planting or regenerating a tree that takes 5 or 10 years before it becomes useful, you need a little bit more certainty than that. You also need it in order to manage grazing issues, Jacobo. If you have no grazing plan, you get massive degradation. People who don't understand grazing call it overgrazing. It's not, it's badly planned grazing. If you have a grazing plan and you let grasses and forbs and legumes and so on regenerate in between each passage of the animals, you have an increase in biomass productivity. Again, that's something that can only be done and managed at community level. Some states get this. And surprisingly enough, one of the states that gets it the best is Ethiopia, which most of us think as a pretty authoritarian top-down state, and which is going pear-shaped now with the war in Tigray. But before that war, Ethiopia realized that there was a solution to the fiscal problem of every African state. The fiscal problem of every African state is that since most Africans are rural and since most rural people are poor, nobody pays taxes, so the state is poor. And the little money that there is spent in the capital city and not in the countryside. Vicious circle. Ethiopia realized that its farmers were poor, so couldn't afford to pay taxes in cash, but they could afford to pay taxes in labor. So, as an experiment, together with the World Bank, they decided in a number of regions, all right, guys, you're going to pay taxes now in the form of labor. In the agricultural off-season, you're going to give 15 or 20 or 25 days of your time to a community project. That's your tax payment. And the stroke of genius was it's not a bureaucrat in Addis or the provincial capital who said, you will build a road or you will do this or you'll do that. The community had to talk and discuss and come to a plan about how that labor would be invested, supported by experts from Mekelle University, in my mind, one of the best universities in the world for land restoration at scale. And the farmers then may have started with, we need a road or we need a market. But the expert then helped them, well, I mean, look at all this erosion and your production is really low. You've already got the exclosures, but how about some terraces? And people discussed it, and then the labor was invested. And when labor is invested at scale by lots of people, A, it's fun. It's not drudgery because all your neighbors, all your friends, all your family are working together. So it's done with music and laughter. And there's an end to it. It's 20 days. After that, you get back to your normal life. Transformative, because it leans on communities. And here is a result of what that means. Niger has this pro-tree environment, policy environment. Nigeria, just to the south, doesn't. These transects by Great Tappan from the US Geological Survey show the tree density of areas that have the same soil, the same ethnic group, and similar sized villages north and south of that border. As you can see, there's a lot more trees in Niger than in Nigeria. So I hope I've convinced you. Larissa, I know I don't need to convince you, and I probably don't need to convince many of you, but those of you who come from the cropping side and who don't know agroforestry so well, that this can be a good part of the solution. But then we have to ask the question, Larissa, why are sales of pesticide increasing so much? If this is the future, why does the world look more and more like this? Easy. We are apes. We are clever apes. We are probably the cleverest ape around, although I never had a QI test competition with a gorilla. But we are still pretty damn stupid compared to the complexity of the real world. So we manage the world by creating silos. We have ministries of this and ministries of that and departments of this and departments of that. And we recreate that all up and down the scale. Even here at Tropentag, we're all interested in agroecology, but the person who is a specialist in, I don't know, palm oil genetics probably knows relatively little about pastoral systems in Colombia. The world, of course, doesn't work that way. In the world, everything works together, mixes together, competes together, collaborates together. Nutrients, genes, species, water, gases. So we introduce, through simplification, we already introduce stress onto the world. The second is neoliberalism. All bow to neoliberalism, capitalism, hallelujah. What that means is we don't tax capital expenditure, or very little. We don't tax operational expenditure, or very little. You can depreciate your tractor. You can deduct your pesticide costs from your expenses. But don't hire a worker. Oh man, don't hire a worker. In Europe, you hire a worker, it's going to cost you about 150% of his base salary in extra taxes and social security contributions. In poor countries like Niger, the bureaucracy is horrendous, so nobody hires a worker except illegally. Labor is expensive, and machines are even more stupid than humans. A machine can do a monocrop field easily, but a machine cannot take the decision of, that particular strawberry plant is diseased, I'm going to take it out, and then I'm going to put a little bit more water here. It just cannot handle that complexity. The second thing is this idea of progress. We all believe it. We who live in the rich world think we got there because of progress, and those of us who live in the developing world hope that progress is going to get us out of there. Well, this is what progress actually meant for most of the 20th century. It meant turning the city of Birmingham, this is a picture from the late 30s, a thriving mixed community with workshops in the back, shops in the front, people living in the top, markets and the trade in the street, into this. This is a picture from the early 60s. Factories over here, farms over there, whoops, sorry. Farms over there, housing over there, schools over there, all connected by brand new motorways on which we use cars to go from one to another. We destroyed an organic system that worked and replaced it with an inorganic system that requires massive quantities of inputs on an ongoing basis. You need steel and petrol and whatever you need for these cars and for these factories. And by the way, if you think that's a problem with capitalism, nah. This is a Soviet-era poster designed to tell Soviet farmers that, boy, they're doing great. They're beating the shit out of capitalist farming. Why? Because we produce more tractors and we have bigger fertilizer plants. In other words, this is a poster about agriculture that is red and gray, not green, that does not show a single plant or a single animal, but that simply shows machinery. Why? Why, Larissa? Why do people love pesticides? Because they're bloody great. They're a miracle. They're miraculous tools. When people first started using these things in the 1930s, it's magical. You've got an aphid infestation on your apples. Oh, your maize is yellowing and drooping a little bit. Put some fertilizer down. Boom, it's green. Problem gone. These are extraordinary tools. And they had exactly the same effect on the world's farming community as a Nintendo Switch has under the Christmas tree on a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old will ignore every toy that he or she had before and will only focus on that marvelous new device, that video game console. Farmers did exactly the same thing. Thousands of years of experimentation that developed farming systems that were extraordinarily productive. If you don't believe me, look at the map of imperialism. Europe conquered the world on the basis of organic agriculture. Thousands of years of good farming practices were swept away in a few years because we loved our new toys. And that had consequences, financial consequences. The cash flow for people who produce inputs is massive. It's great. Hey, you have a farm? Buy my combinations proprietary seed, the pesticides that go with it and the fertilizer that go with it. I'll make somewhere between $50 and $100 per hectare per year from your field. Everybody buys my products. There's what, 20 big companies that produce these products around the world? That means that almost every commercial farmer in the world is contributing to the bottom line of these companies. We, the agroecologists, hey, let me tell you about some trees. Can you please pay me €1,000 for 3 days so that we can plan your system? You're probably going to say no, right? Even though you're spending 20,000, if you have a 200 hectare farm, you're spending between 20 and 50,000 euros a year just buying your inputs. But having to buy consultancy is not something that a farmer typically does, because consultancy comes for free. Advisory services. Who pays for the advisory services? Why? The agribusiness industry. So what do they advise you on is, oh yes, we're all worried about the environment, so we're going to work together to reduce your pesticide load. So what you need to do is to get this other pesticide, which is slightly less damaging. Regretfully, it's twice as expensive, but I'm sure you understand we need to do that to save the planet. That's the kind of bullshit that happens all the time. So what we end up with, a massive marketing machinery, massive research expenditure, and massive influence. And we're simply going at the back of the room going, hey, agroecology, agroecology, don't forget us. It's a marvelous business to be in. Almost finished. It's a marvelous business to be in. And I want your presentation, Larissa, because I only found this table online, and you have actual data, which is probably much better than this commercial data, but that's billions of dollars a year in income for that industry. It buys a lot of influence. And as we all know, who pays the piper calls the tune. The Germans amongst you will recognize the legend. The idea is that a city that was overrun by rats hired a musician that was a magician, whose skill was to attract rats with his music, but what he really wanted was the kids, and he attracted the kids with his music and led them sideways. So we live in the world where the pesticide sale is called a tune. We live in a world where we have forgotten the lessons of Master Yoda. We are not wise. And we need to be wise, because these tools are damaging when they're used in the massive and obscene quantities that you pointed out, but they're still bloody great when you have a particular problem. So we need to repair what I call the agricultural table. A good table has 4 legs. But the current agricultural table only has 3. Genetics, all these new crops and livestock varieties, the forages that you work in, all of that work. Chemistry, just had a full presentation on that. And mechanization, efficiency improvements, machinery, drones, what have you. But the 4th leg is missing. And the 4th leg is, of course, agroecology. What we have to do is not set up a battle between the people who are farming without and the people who are farming with pesticides. Farmers are farmers. They're trying to survive in a difficult world, doing a difficult job. We need to just help them take that extra tool that most of them know nothing about, which means that they get services that they had to pay for free. Who doesn't love to get stuff for free? And that has got to be the message that we put out. And there I have some hope. First, you have more and more people who are talking about these things. I didn't do an n-gram analysis on agroecology, but I'm sure it would go up. But you have more and more books in a variety of languages, many of them addressed directly to farmers, that are advisory guides, primers on how to do this sort of thing. Second, we notice that the amount of trees on agricultural land is already quite large. About 40% of all agricultural land on this planet already has 10% tree cover or more, and this is increasing, slowly, but it is increasing. Farmers aren't stupid, it works, they adopt it. However, it's no silver bullet. There are no silver bullets. There are no silver bullets to the climate crisis, there are no silver bullets to the biodiversity crisis, there are no silver bullets to the inequality crisis, there are not even any silver bullets for Mr. Poisonaro, although we all like to hope. But there are magic pizza pies. Each of these slices represents a way in which we can reduce carbon emissions or suck carbon emissions out of the atmosphere again. And it ranges from windmills to nuclear power stations, silver pastoralism to better forestry management. And if we all work together according to our inclinations and specialties to make these things work, we can get to grips with the problem. And that gets us back to those whales. For those of you who wonder why I'm interested, I love the animals, but I love their shit even more. Whales feed at great depth, 1,000 to 3,000 meters. They shut down their metabolism. Their heart slows down, etc., because they have to conserve the oxygen to keep their brain running. They feed down there, but they don't digest. They come back to the surface, that's where they digest, and that's where they defecate. In other words, they are giant machines for pumping nutrients from the deep oceans close to the surface, where there's sunlight and where photosynthesis can work on these oceans. That, it turns out, is enormously valuable in terms of carbon capture and storage. Why storage? Because a lot of that carbon turns into, in the end, what is called marine snow, particles of carbon-rich material that settle at the bottom of the ocean and stay there. So, I hope that with this tour d'horizon of agroforestry, the Sahel, and whale shit, I have given you some grounds for hope, and I thank you very much for having given me the opportunity to speak here. That's it.
Thank you, Patrick. You all know Tintin, eh? There is Janssen and Janssen, Dupont and Dupont. So here it's Patrick and Patrick. I will maybe allow one question only, because he answered all the unquestioned questions already. See? No one has a question.
It's okay.
Then it's okay. Anyway, you will find him after the session. And thank you again, Patrick. Nice talk. See what Belgium can do to you. By the way, I'm from Ghent, and I tell this in Belgium because, lo and behold, there is a Ghent football team supporter in the audience. And we won yesterday. Thanks to him. I'm also a supporter. Now is the moment that we will have the recap by our student reporters. It was announced the first day. Everyone was like thrilled to know what this would eventually come to. Well, this is the moment that you will present what you found out about this conference. So please. So apparently the video has to come up from up there with you.
Tropentag is under constant development. Every team that is organizing Tropentag adds something new to it. What I'm really excited about is meeting all these people again. That's very nice. I've organized this panel discussion, which is also not usual. So it's first time in Tropentag that we invite academia, we invite farmers, and we put them together to debate about this principal question which we mentioned before, if agroecology can feed the world. This is also almost a burning one. And yeah, of course, we are convinced that we will be able to do that, but still, there might be some problems doing that. But from the discussions, we might have some concrete input on how to reach that goal. Practice with transformative social action and therefore provides the foundation for developing the alternative food systems of the future that will feed the world. Analysis of the innovation. Of course, from our point of view as veterinarians and animal health professionals, we see that animals are included in many of the research, many of the projects, but always more from a like food production or also product production point of view from that side. And we would really like more animal welfare and animal health topics from the veterinary side to be included. National equity, so important. Exchange, networking, inspiration, sustainability, diversity. I think net nutrition. Okay, communication.
Good, another winner. Talking about winners, there should be a few who will be getting some prizes. Yeah. So Petra, where is Petra? She disappeared. Aha, she's running in with a lot of money under her belt. I can see that. I mean, so Petra, please. In the program, it says poster award session. The best 5 Tropentag posters will be granted a prize of this new thing, €300.
Thank you, Patrick. So we are happy to announce the Posters Awards, and in a few seconds you will see 5 names of the best posters. Just to explain how it works, so each chairman of each session nominate one of the candidate or sometimes 2, and then finally the committee selected 5 best posters. Not all the time the posters are really perfect, but we found something interesting on the poster or something why we selected as 5 best posters for this Tropentag conference to 2022. So the first name, I think now we can see it. So we would like to kindly ask the main presenter of the poster to come here and to receive the prize of €300 as the award. So the first one is Gian Changdang from Germany, or like studying in Germany. So if you are here, if you can please come, because you are selected as the best poster candidate. Okay, so it seems that the winner is not here anymore, but don't worry, we will send the money to her. Or otherwise we go shopping, but. Okay, so the next one is Teresa from University of Valencia in Spain. By the way, you are a perfect dancer. I saw it yesterday night.
For those who are wondering, this is our pet crop of the faculty. Ananas, we call it in Czech.
Okay, so both these posters, they are evaluated based on the quality. And then the next one, it's Shan Alam, also from the university in Germany. Just to add, this poster was selected mainly because the rules for the poster sessions there to be able to present the poster in 3 minutes. So you can see that the poster is simple, but on the other hand, it's possible to present it in 3 minutes. So it's also one aspect which was evaluated. The next one is the winner of online session. So Sebastian Yanore from Ghana. And from the University of Ghana, probably is not here because it was presented online, and we appreciated also the oral presentation or the video which was presented during the online session, and also the communication and answering to all the questions during the online session. So probably we will send the money to Ghana. And last not least is Hannah Fulbert from also Germany. So if you are here, please come. And this poster was selected particularly because the qualitative findings are presented. So it's an interesting way how to present the qualitative data, which is not all the time so easy. So please, if Hannah is here. Okay, so we would like to congratulate to all winners, and we hope that this motivates all our participants for the next year to present and improve the posters. There are many very nice posters presented, so it was really difficult to select the ones which we think that are interesting, or we call it as the best. And we congratulate to everyone who was able to present either the oral presentation or the poster, because you did amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Now on the program, it says, yes, please come, that there is the result of the photo competition that was organized by Let's Plant, and so I gladly pass the word on to the organizer.
Yeah, thank you. I need another presentation. Before here is starting, yeah, I'm representing here a very little and a young NGO called Let's Plant. We are devoted to a landscape restoration, landscape management projects, and we want, with this photo competition, we wanted to foster, let's say, the idea of course, we thank the organizers for allowing us to do it. We have added, of course, a new layer of challenges to the organizers. We know that the call, the contribution, the collection of contributions was has some hiccups. Was the main idea? Main idea of this photo competition is that one picture can tell more than 1,000 words, you know it, and a photo story can even tell more. And we think particularly if it is supported by a scientist or a scientific based story behind it. That is, of course, we don't want only to have the pictures, but also the stories. That is important when we evaluate the winners or the competition. That is what we do with, as I said, it's the third time that we do this competition. We try to exhibit the prized photos. The first one we exhibited because that was Corona time. We had to do it outside. We exhibited in a Zeitenwende, in an exhibition in a communal forest in Bonn or near Bonn, where several of the pictures were exhibited. The pictures of 2021 were exhibited in the Botanical Gardens entry hall, also in Bonn. We are located in Bonn, so that is the reason. And the competition 2022, we are growing, so that symbolized by this tree, we are growing in experience, and also the number of entries and submissions is growing. We had 21 this year, and the trend is going up. The jury is composed of two persons of the NGO, that's me and Marco Höttke, who is our CEO, and by Jan Banut, who is here from the University of Prague. And we had also we have two jury members which haven't contributed to this 2022 Tropentag competition, but which are in the jury for logistical reasons. It wasn't possible. It's Marian Reichenbach from the University of Kassel and Gesche Schifferdecker from European Forest Institute, also in Bonn. And we want to expand these exhibitions looking for sites and for sponsors. So we are in talks with GIZ, UNCCD and UNFCCC, which are also located in Bonn by chance, but we want to grow a little bit. So if you have also ideas where we could do this more, then please welcome. In the end, the last slide will show our contact details. Before I start with the presentation of the winners, very few hints to make better pictures and to have even better contributions to our competition and also outside. Photos can tell a lot, but they have to also to respect, let's say, certain quality roles. I have tried to number them here under a label, wilderness. It's a little bit artificial, but maybe that is easier then to digest and to remember. First of all, what you tell is what should be on the photo. So the story and the photos should tell the key issues that you want to convey with your story, and not something. A nice photo is nice that you can send in somewhere else, but not in a photo competition, which should have this scientific background. It should have interesting perspectives, maybe not always from this angle, but also maybe sometimes from below, from the air, from inside a stable, something like that. It should have lines. Lines is very important in photography. Perspectives into the room, into space. Lines which can also link certain elements in your photo. Maybe also colors can contribute to lines. It should have a depth, so front, middle, back, if it is possible to create depth in the photo, very important. Equilibrated, there is a golden ratio. Please check it maybe in one of the books. A golden ratio is a balancing of within the photo where you put your central piece, where how much of the portion, 1/3 maybe should be the background, 1/3 the foreground, something like that. Resolution is very important. If you want us to exhibit your photos, we need high resolution and not a mobile photo, because they have very low. They can be very nice, but not enough They can be prized but not exhibited. Please, and that we have received several of these submissions, no pots and plants only. It seems that many of the crop scientists love pots and plants, I can understand, but we are landscape, we want to tell more than only this eye-catching motifs, and you will see some of them try to make even of the borest landscape, you can identify elements which are attracting interest. And if you tell stories, try to have a diversity of motifs and not only the same motif from different angles, but for example, go from scales, from macro to landscape, include people, include animals, plants, so that there is a diversity. Okay, so that is the wilderness concept, and yeah, I think if you respect it, then you have even better photos for us or for communicating with the outside worlds, the stories that you want to convey. Now we come to the third prize. We go only from third to first. We have two categories. One is single prize photo, and this is the third prize. Okay, fine, thank you. The first single prize photo is from Gabriela Traoré, and that is a picture from Burkina Faso. We had tried to inform the prize takers, and I'm not sure now whether she will be able to make a short contribution. That was the deal with Tropentag, but I don't see that it is possible here. If not, then it will not also be possible for the other prize takers, so very sorry for that. They had prepared to explain a little bit their photo and the story behind. That will not be possible now, it seems so. So we simply go through the pictures, and yeah, as I said, I don't will make many words. They show a lot, these pictures here, the unity between nature and local construction. Third prize, Gabriela Traoré. Second prize is from, that's good. That encouraged them, thank you. Second prize is from Marta Kivlip, a picture from Ethiopia, where she's showing a starting landscape restoration project. And again, I know that she is, she wanted to be with us virtually, she has confirmed, but no possible. Okay, second prize, please give it also applause. And the first prize, sorry, that is a little mistake here in the slide, is to Nanda Chan, a picture from Myanmar, a local community, a very classical picture, of course, of a traditional landscape where there's cultivation in the bas-fond, in the lowlands, and a diverse landscape in the background with forests and with grazing lands. And there is also foreground with some grasses, so really a perfect manifestation of many of the principles of wilderness. Now we are coming to the photo stories. We have two third prizes. One is from Katharina Tusix, and I know she is here. I've seen her. Yeah, here. Do you want to briefly explain a little bit what you wanted to convey with your photo story? Because that was the initial idea, yeah, to have the photos, but also a few words.
Thank you. Yes, we know all that pictures are so important because we have seen so much posters, so much presentations, and in each presentation, in each poster, the picture is needed. And to make research on the field is very exciting because you can hear, you can look, you can see, you can smell, you can feel. Of course, all these feelings not possible to bring to transfer to the picture, but nevertheless, we are all the time trying. And on this slide, you can see picture from Uganda. It was research about climate change. And we collected data together with the students from our partner universities, Mountains of the Moon, in the Ruwenzori region of Uganda. And we collected 200 10 smallholders, farmers, and the result is done. Results were presented in the master thesis by our student from Weinsteffen-Triesdorf University, where I work also. Thank you.
So yeah, some of the pictures, the photos, the picture story. So that is the first 4 slides. Here you see people working and in the countryside. You see also heavy erosion in this case. So it's not only nice. It's also showing problems, but also some of the solutions. We coming to the third prize by Lea Sophie Hansen. The pictures are from Kenya. I don't think that she is with us. I haven't received her feedback. So just digest a little bit the pictures. They are showing a very diversified agro-silvopastoral landscape with people who are obviously not bad living in this landscape. For Africa, it's a relatively wealthy houses. So I think it shows maybe people living more or less in harmony with their nature. At least this is what the pictures are conveying. The second prize in the photo story, it is a very interesting one. It's a little bit extraordinary because it shows a slum landscape, a landscape where people are trying to grow within in Kenya, I think it's in Nairobi, and you see it is and we have the prize. Okay, very good. I leave you the floor immediately. Come and explain what you want to show us.
Thank you very much. So when you look at this photo, first I really wanted to ask what do you really see? And I believe there are very many answers to it. But then these photos were taken in one of the slums in Nairobi City. And inside the fencing, the boundary with green and black is a kitchen garden. Yes. See, you couldn't really imagine that it could just be appearing somewhere in there. And this was initiated by the youth in this slum. And this kitchen garden exists in the midst of some densely constructed iron sheet houses. And also the area is characterized by a lot of wasting. You can see that the youth reclaimed this piece of land for urban gardening, and they are growing different varieties of vegetables, their own consumption, but also they sell some to the neighboring households, so creating a dietary diversity. And what is unique is that they grow on different kind of recycled materials. For example, you can see the plastic tins, you can see the wooden crates, and previously, the jeans trousers. The old jeans trousers is also used to grow. And next to the tank are old TV casings. So they use the waste, and pots from the nearby garbage. So as I summarize, I would say that for the youth in this slum, they show the possibility of creating a better landscape, and they say it's therapeutic for them and also offers them hope for a better future.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now we come to the first prize. That is Giovanna Chavez Miguel. I was corrected. Already second time participant in our contest, and she has some very nice pictures and a story from Peru.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for making this space. I have to say this is the second time I participated, and I feel so motivated to tell everybody who has the opportunity like us to go on field to incredible rural spaces to grab a camera and tell a story together with moving images and pictures as well. My research recently, I just came back last week, and we did a exploration of 3 months where we traveled 9,000 kilometers in Peru and the Peruvian Andes. And there I documented the very more traditional farming systems that one can imagine. The first picture over here is potato landscapes, and the contrasting picture next to it is the expanding agro-industrial production of blueberries for exports. I had the opportunity to be supported by ATSAF in my equipment as well. I got a drone and a camera and multiple lenses, and it's incredible to tell a story, not only with pictures, but also in form of a documentary. Here in the second, on the bottom, we see ancestral terraces and the processing way, which is called chuño, and farmers freeze their potatoes in the river to preserve their shelf life. Yeah, and here we have the colorful diversity of potatoes and tubers in Peru. There's over 4,000 tubers identified by the International Potato Center, and yeah, incredible to be able to document it and present it here to you. Expect a film next year. Sorry. Yeah, this is women. I also submitted another picture of a woman. I am in love with Peruvian women, with their beauty and tradition, with the hats that they wear. And here on the right, we have a collective work, a faena, in which farmers get together and join work forces to. Oh yeah. Sorry. No. Yeah, and this last one is the high Andean ecosystems, which are rapidly melting glaciers. We see the effects of climate change in, well, on the other side there was a melting glacier, but yeah, it's incredible to be able to take pictures from the air as well. Thank you so much.
So really a very nice story, and I'm sure we will find some takers for these pictures. So if you have any ideas, if you want to support us or join us, we are, as I say, we are young. We have maybe now 15 members. So if you want to join, based in Bonn, but we are also internationally trying to expand our networks, this is the contact address and a few of our team. Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you. No, I'll keep it. On the program now is basically that our good rector would appear. I should have now changed hats. I was told he is in town, so probably he will not be able to make it, so you will have to do with me. The idea is that there is a bit of a closure before handing over to the next Tropentag organizer. This is maybe the moment where I would like to show, in line with the theme of the conference that we are having on our behalf here in Prague, an online course on agroecology that we want to launch. So we are now finalizing contents and admin. And so this is just to give you a flavor. You can read for yourself. So this is like a call to you to join us. It will be international. It is online, 2 years. People will be invited to come 2 times during the 2 years course program to Prague and to present what they have been preparing to us. So you can contact me, you can contact the people at the faculty, you find us on our website. However, we are not the only ones interested in providing this kind of course program, because we are also, and this starts as from now, a double degree program together with our partners in the University of Hohenheim. In fact, on Wednesday we had a prep meeting on that, and we are glad to see that we already have a few students. So basically, students joining in that program will have eventually 2 degrees in 2 different universities. It's a 2 years program. It's a master level program. And basically it merges 2 existing programs, both in Prague here in my faculty and in Hohenheim itself. So we want to offer a wider choice of courses to interested students, and we think that will be an added value also to have two teaching research cultures brought together in one program. So if you want to join us, we are quite ambitious because we want to train you for the job market, of course, and we think that by joining forces, we will be able to provide you with enough experience and background to go into international development organizations, non-government organizations, also international agricultural research and such, research and development. So here again, we start now. It follows the European rules on credit system. It's taught in English. It's supervised by both universities, faculties, institutes therein. And so, yeah, just go for it, I would say. At this junction, at this moment, it's also my pleasure. So you don't have to run away, and you have to wait until Berlin will take over. But it's also my pleasure to thank the people who have made this possible from our behalf. On my behalf, I think that you were a very mixed but very interesting group. I think that the organizers, and we see old hand Eric just come in on cue, he represents all these millennia of years of Tropentag that we have had before. We are always fired by your enthusiasm and also by the mix of backgrounds and experiences that you share with us. But of course, we facilitate. There is ATSAF, there is the organization behind Tropentag. But here on the grounds, there's of course many people who have been working for days, nights, have passed some time in elevators that did not work and such. And so I would like to thank those now on your behalf. I would like to start with, thank you, yeah, go ahead. I learned just now that as a photographer, I should not take pictures of plants and pots, but still, I will point to the plants that were provided to us by our botanical garden, and I hope that some of you at least went there because we have a nice collection, not only of flowers, but also of edibles and all the rest. So I thank the father of our curator there who provided us with the florals that you find all over the place. And he also put some flowers in some bucket. Now the bucket may be a bit heavy, but I would like to offer these flowers to the person who has been hovering over us. Yeah, and you might deduct from this that it's a she. Yeah, normally, if it were a he would be given a bottle of wine. But so I would like to call Olga Leuner. Yeah. Yeah, so you can take it now and just wave for it. Through you, I would like to thank all the people that have helped you. Well, we see some of the suspects, but there is also students that I was told had orange, white, and other colored t-shirts that helped you with registration and also with facilitated the presentations and such. So through Olga, please thank all these collaborators. And I would also like to thank those that you don't see, because there were some sitting in offices and behind the scene trying to get these displays and presentations going. So also I thank them in your name. There's someone coming out even, so wave. And so I would also like to extend your thanks to all the faculty members that have helped us out in one way or another. And also the university, of course, because we are just the smallest and youngest faculty of this university, but also without the help of the university authorities, we would not have been able to enjoy these beautiful premises. In a way, we were lucky that there was COVID because this building then was finished, and so that we could all sit here. We also, I think, appreciated our faculty building. There's still some things that have to be addressed, like elevators and such. But it's a wise lesson for us. We promise that somewhere in the all or not near future, we will again organize a Tropentag, but that will be in 20 something, yeah. In 2023, it will be Berlin. So I would like at this instance to call in one live representative, and apparently there's also someone online.
Yes.
So
it's. Wait a moment.
Before I will give you a vote, we want to also thank very much two more people. And those two more people are sitting here in the audience. They've worked for how many years? Nobody remembers because they were first here and they are running our botanical garden. So I would like to call Zdeněk and Maria Hlavačovi to come to us, and we will give them also a small prize for running that beautiful botanical garden for us.
Have to show. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for interruption, but we had to do it. It was very important for us.
And I must say, in line with that drawing, painting, I forgot to thank our artist in residence. I told her that we are already looking for a frame. I also thank the hidden face, because at the back, at least some of you also contributed with some ideas. But please give her another hand and a nice piece of work. And with this, Berlin.
Yes, maybe we can present the brain of our next year, Heike Schobert. She will organize together with us. And we have also one person, she's online. It is Dagmar Mithöfer, and she will also warmly welcome you. With the slightest, I would say, hangover I had from this wonderful party yesterday, I look to the local organizing committee, and they have a smile in their face because they are released. And this is wonderful for you. It is with a burden, but a positive burden for us. And we happily receive the new task to bring you all, hopefully, to Berlin next year. Please come. We invite you already. And yes, it is from, well, I carry all the good experiences also for the 2 days I was here. Home to Berlin, and we hope that we also learned something to even also bring your new concepts in into our concept. It is 20 and to 22 in September. Don't forget the date. Please save the date already. And the title is, maybe we can have the next slide, because we were organizing and we were discussing already a little bit, and it is close to your title, but it has to do more with its competing pathways derived from the foods summit, the UN Food Summit, on equitable food systems transformation, trade-offs and synergies. And we are also looking for this kind of dialogue and controversies, that we have really a discussion involved of different food systems, and also on the question of coexistence of food systems and up to which level and where are the boundaries, etc. Yes, we are very happy that Humboldt University is the venue, the official, they provide the venue, and we have in a partnership approach, we both will organize it. That means the Humboldt University to Berlin and the Leibniz Center for Agricultural Landscape Research South, and of course together with the ATSAF. The program is mainly by us from South, of course, and it is Dagmar Mithöfer, Harald Grete from Humboldt University. Maybe next slide. Yes, and you see, and it's a bit funny, the picture for myself was, you took it, it is some years ago. And yes, and you see already the organizing committee, and we hope that we started already, but that we now intensify our collaboration, cooperation and planning process. And please, again, we warmly welcome you for the next year's conference. Maybe I just would like to say, Dagmar, could you also, from your side, from the side at the Humboldt University, pardon? I can present myself. Yes, and maybe Dagmar, can we have you, that you also from the Humboldt University can also have some words on your thinking? You're online, no? It's in the Zoom. And it would be great to see you right now in order to have a face, and that you could also summarize. Dagmar, are you there?
Thank you, Stefan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we cannot see you so far.
The video is disabled, I'm told.
Yes, now we hope to see you also on the video. Okay. We cannot see you, but we can hear you. You don't share your camera, isn't it?
I'm being told that the host has stopped my camera.
Okay. It was not on purpose.
No, don't worry.
Now you're completely gone. Well, can you bring her back? That would be great also for the conference. And in this regard, I can just say, and the best news what we have in Berlin is that we have a functioning airport now. And it took us more than 10 years to plan it properly. So, Dagmar, can you hear us again?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, then please.
But my video is still not there.
Yeah.
So, dear audience, please bear with me. We will meet in person next year, hopefully. So, my name is Dagmar Mithöfer, And on behalf of Humboldt University and of course self and all the members of the program committee, I really very much look forward to seeing you all in Berlin next year. And I really look forward to intensive discussions and exchanges on this, what we hope is a topic that invites controversy. And we do hope that along the lines that we're sketching in our title on the competing pathways, on equitable food system transformation, trade-offs and synergies, we will have very many good contributions and good exchanges in the formal sessions as well as in the informal sessions. So on behalf of my colleagues, I'm really happy to see you all in Berlin next year.
So thank you. See you again, and please come next year. And with this, I'd like to say goodbye. See you soon.
And we really very much look forward to see you in Berlin next year.
So with this is finished. Los Andos. See you again.